everyone became an entrepreneur all of a sudden.
Yes.
Yeah, becoming a mom has been amazing, but it's really pushed me into, I don't want to say this, but I'm gonna, like, the best version of myself so far.
I love it. Hey guys, welcome back to the studio. Today we have a leading woman in business, Whitney Chenet, founder of Finley Investments. Welcome to the studio, Whitney.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to come in.
Absolutely.
Cool. So how's Whitney Finley Investments going?
Great. Never a dull moment for a short answer. Finley Investments encompasses a lot of things.
Yes.
So the meaning behind that, Finley is my maiden name. And I was investing in myself when I created that entity. It was when I left the corporate world and kind of went to work for myself. So it has a personal touch, but in a professional sense, what I do is I invest in business, real estate, and help other people do the same thing. So it all kind of works.
Yeah, it's a pretty broad spectrum too.
Yeah.
I know that you're heavily involved in the business network, women in business. You're all over the place. And just to give the audience a little context, we actually met at an award ceremony. We both won awards that year, and you won Women Business Leader of the Year that year.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
I was up for the Chamber Choice Award. I won.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
we both actually got special congressional recognition from the U.S. Department of Labor.
Yes.
Yes.
We did. And you were wearing a wonderful suit coat that night.
Yeah, thank you. I was wearing something a little different. Funny, yes.
Yep.
I know you're heavily involved in the community. I have a fun story about community and that night. So meeting you that night, it was just fun chatting with you right off the rip. We connected and had a great organic conversation. And I was wearing that crazy jacket. And it was funny because my escort for that evening, for that event, was my 82-year-old neighbor, Sue. And how I met Sue is we connected during COVID. Actually, her husband Bill passed away. And he did not pass away of COVID. But it was not COVID related, but he passed away during that time, and everyone was pretty isolated. And our backyards kind of meet up, and I had my two Great Danes, and my Great Danes would play in the backyard, and she'd, I used to
see them there.
She would throw treats over the fence and stuff like that, and we'd wave to each other, and it was always nice to see her, and she was always pleasant. And then after her husband passed away, we connected. I can't remember who made the first move, but she baked me a plate of cookies and left them on my porch.
Can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly. And so she baked me a nice plate of baked goods and left me a nice note. And I remember also too, her daughter had reached out to me, and she had asked me if I would mind checking in on her mom from time to time. And I was like, of course I will. Absolutely, no problem.
Yeah,
and
nice.
Plus I had already had the plate of cookies, so that was a great lead in.
Maybe there'd be more cookies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some fresh baked bread. And so, because I knew her husband passed away, and I wanted to give her a nice thank you.
Yeah,
so I bought the nice bouquet of roses. I left them on her porch, and she was just overwhelmed by the flowers. And she wrote me this beautiful handwritten thank you, and had mentioned that after her husband Bill passed away, she thought she would never see roses like that again. Like, she'd never thought anybody would bring her flowers, so that really caught her off guard. And so I continued monthly to give her a dozen roses. I would leave them on her porch.
I'm a big flower person, so
that's awesome.
Is very much
I am not a flower person,
Oh.
but I appreciate flowers, right? And
Yeah.
so we had a nice exchange, and so that's how that friendship came to be. And so I had won that award.
Yeah.
And
she was there to witness it.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so I invited her to come.
Yeah.
I said, Sue, I won this award. I was wondering if you'd like to join me for the event, because it was at the country club down the street from our house. And, I thought that was it was a great time for her and I to connect. And then I got to meet you that night.
Yeah.
So I know.
Well, and for her, just having lost her husband, just to get out and, see the flowers one, but to see people and interact and just feel, I don't know, special, I guess.
Yeah, it was great. And that was a great event. And you not only won Woman in Business of the Year, Leader of the Year, you won a couple more awards also.
Yeah, that year.
Yes.
I was doing a lot for the community, involved in the chamber. I joined the board, so I did receive recognition because of a lot of effort that I gave. The other, I believe, was Young Professional of the Year.
Yeah.
And I'm drawing a blank on the name of a third that came as well, but just involvement.
Well, you were like Whitney Houston with the Grammys
Yeah.
just that night with all your awards in your hands. Yes.
Minus the singing voice. I'll take it. But I did have a great year of recognition, but a lot of hard work went into that too.
Oh, yeah.
So as, you know, much as I guess I feel a little bashful even just talking about it, getting that recognition, but you have to be proud of it. You know, you put in the time, the work, and the heart was there. So
absolutely,
it's nice to get recognized.
We're very similar in that way. I used to keep all my accolades in a red rubber tote, and like not put them up and not like recognize them. And I learned from a mentor that I should celebrate my wins. And be, you know, it's okay to be humble, but you know, it's also okay to you know, be appreciated and celebrated for those things. And a lot of hard work does go into that. And I know you're a big name in the community for all the things that you do. And I think that that's great. That's why I want to share the story about Sue with you, because that's such a community type story.
Oh yeah. So that's
I think that's great. And then, you know, also too, just the cherry on the cake was the special, congressional recognition from the U.S. Department of Labor. That was always
just a nice extra to be thrown in. And, you know, I hadn't been exposed to that before. So
me neither.
Something new and again, appreciated. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Walk me down how you got started. Like what took you through, because I know you grew up kind of in the local area too.
Yeah.
And so
how far should we go back?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like what inspired you to, you know, become, you know,
business, you mean? Probably a lot. I'm going maybe a little further back for a second. I was thinking about this morning a little bit actually before I came here, and both of my parents worked really hard, and I know that I watched them. You know, my mom, I would go to work with her and observe and, you know, see. And I know I picked up more than I realized at the time. My dad worked in a completely different industry, but I would always overhear him. He'd come home and do computer work, and he was like the finance guy, and he was always trying to teach me things when I was a teenager. Both my parents were very proactive about teaching me financial responsibility and just things that I wouldn't have been exposed to on my own. So I feel that now that I'm where I'm at, I see that they had a really big influence. And I'll add that my grandfather, who thankfully was very close with both my grandfathers, had a really big emphasis on education and took a lot of pride in the fact that someone could be educated, you know, coming from the times that they did. So that was always something that I connected with my grandpa on, and, you know, he helped lead me through some of my education, and we talked about that, and he was always so proud that I was able to take the education and then eventually apply it to what I was doing. So didn't realize it at the time, but I was just in an environment where it was appreciated and introduced to me. So I went to college for business. I was working for a company that was in downtown Pontiac. I had worked with them in high school, and they hired me full time. I didn't go away to college. I stayed home and worked full time and went at night and on the weekends. And then in 2004, I literally sent my resume to a real estate developer, and they called me for an interview and they hired me. And that's how I got into real estate. So I started as an administrative assistant working for a real estate developer. They were building houses at the time, and then they also owned and managed a ton of commercial real estate. So they had tenants all throughout Metro Detroit. So I was just helping support all of those endeavors and kind of grew up, learned about land and what happened before the house or the building or the structure was put on the property, which was something I was never exposed to. You know, I was 18, 19 years old at this time. So I got in to a company that taught me a lot, exposed me to a lot of different things. And then, you know, from there, I went to the next developer, and they were doing a little bit different, but bigger things. And, you know, I just kept going. I became a project manager. I got my real estate license. We were developing, we were consulting, we were selling over time. And I stayed in that realm. So, you know, commercial real estate is my background, but with a big emphasis of development. And some of those products were developed into housing, whether it's residential subdivision or multifamily apartments or what have you, you know? So I've seen the suburban, I've seen the urban, I've seen the revitalization of downtown Detroit. We were able to work with some cool people on some cool projects.
I've seen that on your social media.
So I've been exposed to a lot of different areas of real estate, which I didn't know I was in for that. And I didn't even know all that existed, but I love the industry.
Well, it happens
I love,
just very organically like
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
Yep. So I was a project manager role, bringing, for example, a piece of land, we'd buy it, and then we'd work with the engineers, the surveyors, the governing agencies, be it the state of Michigan, the local county, the local city, township, village, what have you. Get all the approvals, line it all up, get it into a place where it's ready to be built, pass it off to the construction management team, and then sometimes come back in at the end to sell the product, whether that's, an apartment, a building, you're leasing, tenants, it can be a number of things.
Yeah.
So super cool. For me, I've always loved it. I was able to thrive in that. But I realized over time, I was always kind of putting Whitney last because I loved my job so much.
Yeah.
And that was okay for a while. But, over time, there was things that had happened, personal shit.
Right. Well, you're young.
That I dealt with, but I didn't.
You're young and you were hungry to learn. So it's easy to put yourself on the back burner.
Yeah, and I was
it's
doing
like you're
good.
putting yourself on the back burner, but you're not. But you're
Yeah.
kind of like your self-care and your wellness, maybe.
Yeah, it wasn't a choice I realized I was making at
Right.
the time, but I continuously was making choices that created that
Yeah.
over time, I
Right.
guess is the way to say it. So
Yeah.
there was a point where I was probably in the best place in my career that I had been, but on a personal level, I was starting to kind of struggle. I was just, old traumas and things were surfacing. And again, now I see it much clearer than I did at the time, but there was just something in me that needed to switch up my environment and still doing what I love, but I knew I could do it in a way that would give more value to my personal life. It's not like I needed more time to go hang out with friends or anything.
Your soul.
I had plenty of time to do that.
Yeah.
Like inward,
Yes.
and I couldn't have said that at the time either.
Right.
But I see it very clear now, and I've done a lot of work, and me leaving the corporate world, what I will say I really look at as being on someone else's time and taking care of someone else's priorities.
Sure.
I now can take care of my priorities and myself and make my time work for all of them.
You were
know?
recognizing that you were
Yeah.
such an asset to someone else, but you
Yeah.
could be an asset to yourself
Yeah.
also.
And I didn't really know what that looked like. And
Right.
that wasn't me. I wasn't the girl who didn't have a plan. I wasn't
Right.
the girl who, made decisions without having overthought it or thought through it or put the plan on paper or set it all up perfectly. But I just knew I needed to change. And I ended up quitting my job without an exact plan. But I knew it was okay. I just
Yeah.
knew it was okay.
Yes.
It didn't feel okay at the moment. I was, just emotions were coming up. So blah, blah, blah. That's what kind of pushed me, to be honest. And it was the push I needed.
Yeah.
And, from a financial aspect, I knew what I knew. And I realized at that time what a great network I had, what I did know. I knew I was good at what I was doing, but to
Mhm.
take it and find my way on my own, I had to really, what do I know? What
Yeah.
am I capable of? Am I, as good as I was for that guy?
Yes.
And the answer was yes.
Yes.
It was yes. And I just had
a
to.
huge yes.
It was so yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful. But,
It's weird how we'll undersell ourselves to
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
But we'll oversell ourselves for somebody else.
Right.
We walked such similar paths.
Yeah.
Like I hear my story out of your mouth
Yeah.
right now too.
And I'm not someone to misrepresent
Yeah.
who I am
Right.
or what I can do, or I'm not the oversell, underdeliver person. And
Right.
if I ever did that, I'd be completely mortified.
Yes.
And, it's not in me. So I'm very thoughtful in what I do. And that one, there was something inside me driving me to make the change. And I'm glad that I did. And
Yeah.
I figured it out. So,
Yes. Did I say oversell? I meant overestimate or underestimate.
Oh,
really.
I don't know if you, yeah.
Yes. In the way that, like when I was working for somebody else too, it was just, I had kind of a similar journey as you explained, that you just kind of grew, like from your first, taking your first professional step to the next.
Mhm.
It was like same for me. And I just kept growing, and I had great mentors, and I
Yeah.
was working for someone else.
Mentors. I realized what great mentors I worked around my whole career.
You were surrounded, well, from
I
the
was.
get-go, you had both your grandfathers, as you mentioned,
Yeah,
and then your
right.
and your folks.
Yeah.
And that was mine too. Like I had a similar, I was close with my grandparents growing up. And also, I had great parents, so I watched them. I watched how their marriage worked, and I
Yeah.
watched how they raised us, and I watched how they worked. They worked very hard. I was just thinking about this morning before we got together here, and I thought, my parents were not entrepreneurs, but they were very hard
Yeah,
workers.
mine weren't either,
But
actually.
but the way
Yeah.
that I didn't think they were. I thought, yes, your parents same as mine, and but they were very hard workers and they role modeled that.
Yeah.
But they also had a lot of side gigs that they did, and I
Okay.
think that if they were parents right now, they would be entrepreneurs.
Sure.
If they were
Isn't that funny?
yes,
Well,
I
I
see
think
how they were. They would totally be entrepreneurs because of I look at how I watched them do everything they did on the side. My
Yeah.
mom was like the original Etsy.
Oh,
Like she knew how
yeah.
to do everything, ceramics,
I
basket
keep telling my
weaving.
mother-in-law to get on Etsy,
Yeah.
but
I'm like they don't care now because they have money and they're retired and they live in
Yeah.
Florida in their big house and all that.
Yeah.
But they've back then the way that they worked and the way they knew how to do everything outside of their places of employment,
Yeah.
they would
So
be
cool.
huge entrepreneurs right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool to think about. And like you said, like with the way the world changes, it's just different. And then, COVID, I would say I feel like I saw a big change in the entrepreneur world. And I use that term loosely,
Yeah.
or I don't know if that's even the right word, because I feel like almost during COVID, we were all online and a lot of people who, how do I say this? Everyone became an entrepreneur all of a sudden.
Yes.
Just because, independent, and this is not taking away from anybody, but
No, I know exactly what you're saying.
all of a
because
sudden everybody's an entrepreneur and a
anybody
business
can
owner.
form
and yes,
anybody can form an LLC in 5 minutes with
the
$50.
way that it
yeah,
has been
yeah,
is different than it is now.
yes,
But it's okay.
Yeah.
It's just different. And I saw
Yes.
such a big change during COVID for that. So again, with the way of the world can influence just how it's viewed.
It's
But-
scary to me to watch because I watched a lot of people as someone like, you're running a company and you're building your legacy and so forth. And you I know believe in teams and team building and
Mhm.
being a mentor and being a leader.
Yeah.
You obviously you won the Grammy for Woman Business Leader of the
Woo!
Year. Yes. But that's a huge
The
compliment
Grammy.
and speaks to your, speaks to your leadership
Thank you.
capacity, your abilities. And I think, when you're building teams like that, it's not everybody can be an entrepreneur at once. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like kind of just recognizing your skills and your gifts.
Yeah.
And if it's not a bad thing to work for somebody else on their team, if
Yeah.
you can be an asset.
Yeah,
You know
absolutely.
what I mean? I would rather be an asset
Yeah.
and work for somebody else than a liability to myself.
Yep.
That's my
That's
perspective
a
on that.
great way to say that.
And I got really nervous when I started watching, just speaking to your point, how everything changed during COVID because a lot of people were just quitting their jobs.
Yeah.
And there's this huge wave of influencers on social media telling people to quit their jobs, quit your 9
Yeah.
to 5 and start
Or
your
telling
own
them
business.
who to be or like
You really got to know
it
yourself.
felt backwards to
Yes.
me. And I was even in some environments like that, like decide who you are and then be that.
Right.
And that's cool to an extent, but it's also backwards.
Yeah.
And then you see how it's presented online and then you meet the person and there's a big disconnect there
Right.
in a lot of ways. Not
Yes.
always, but in
But
a
it
lot
happens,
of ways.
and I watch it a lot too, and it's like that's not sage advice for somebody that maybe has a family or they're
Yeah.
not financially independent.
Correct.
And they
Yeah.
rely on their paycheck.
Yeah.
And some folks are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And so when you start up a business, I did not have an abundance when I started up. I had the bare bones startup, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it was like I've seen it done both ways.
Mhm.
And I just think, for anybody that's going to take that leap, you really have to know yourself. I think
Yeah.
that it's important. I think it's great that there are so many entrepreneurs out there, but you can become an entrepreneur and keep your 9 to 5 and work on someone else's team. Like say someone wants to get on your team at Finley Investments and mentor under you. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? My
I got her right
greatest
now. Her
Yeah.
name's Natalie.
Beautiful. That's amazing. And
Yep.
so, when I was starting up, it was when I was starting out at 18 years old, getting into the mental health field, I was just surrounded by mentors. And I got on board with a nonprofit and stayed there for 20 years. And I started working in the mental health field with that organization and got to work with some of the top psychologists in the county. And
I hate using the word lucky, but you realize how lucky was I to get exposed.
Exactly. That's why I was getting the goosebumps when you were talking about your mentors.
Help me think the right way. And, just see the right way.
And you're a smart cookie. You have your head on your shoulders. And obviously you did back then because you were so focused and driven. And I was a great team player, and as are you know what I mean, working alongside the people that you worked alongside. And I didn't have a desire to go out and I didn't have some plan like you mentioned. I never thought I was gonna. I was happy at my organization, and I didn't have like the desire to be like number one. I was fine being number two as far as climbing the ranks up into administration. You know what I mean? It was like, I'm cool.
I miss my boss.
Yeah,
my old boss. Like he's amazing.
Yeah,
I hold him high, and how I see him and appreciate him.
Was that a smooth transition for you leaving? Shifting out.
Only unsmooth in my emotional state became, but it's absolutely friendly. Yeah, there was something in me I have to listen to, and I couldn't deny it anymore. So I was open and honest, and the relationship's still there today, which I'm grateful for, and I thankfully wouldn't have it any other way.
Mine is too. That relationship with my previous employer is there too, and we had a rocky like a discharge,
maybe some misunderstanding as far as like where you're at and where I'm at. But I wasn't clear on it either necessarily. So understandably so.
And I didn't want to leave. And when I left that employer, I didn't start my business. I went and actually worked for somebody else because our kind of relationship had come to an end of 20 years, and just things happen. People go through their stuff. Yeah. And my employer was going through their stuff. And out of the blue, opportunity presented itself to me to go work for somebody else. Yeah. And so it only took me 2 months to realize like that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And then it was
still a lesson.
It was a lesson. I don't regret it by any means. Everything happened like it should. I see that now. And so I just did it. I made the leap, just like you said. Yeah. You weren't quite sure exactly what it was going to be like. And it was scary, but
it helped me
learn
to trust myself more too.
And you had to trust all your moves at that point.
Which I wouldn't have said I didn't trust myself. Yes. But it really made me it made me very much trust myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Thankfully,
with
it worked
confidence.
Out.
You know what I thought was interesting, like in getting into those entrepreneurial shoes was trusting my judgment, because I was still a little skeptical, because I would ask mentors, like if I was looking for guidance, but I felt like I knew what I was doing as far as making certain decisions. And what I found was, if I got advice that didn't resonate with me from a mentor, and followed my gut, I was right, and it worked for me. Sometimes I was, and sometimes I wasn't. But more than not, trusting my own instincts took me further ahead. And I would always debrief that with some of my mentors, because I would be honest, and I'd say, well, while I ran this by you, I'm ultimately going to make the decision that's best for me. Yeah. If they thought the opposite of what I was going to do.
Awesome. Awesome. That's not the word I expected to say just then, but it's awesome because even though they walked their path and they're successful and they're now in the shoes to be your mentor, you're empowered enough to be yourself, number one, but realize that like everyone's path is different. And, we were just talking about social media too. And you see these influencers and they're like, buy my program and do this and do that. And that's all great. But that worked for you. And, Joe and Bob, they're different than you. They got to find their path. They got to find themselves. Their energy might flow in a different direction, So it's really awesome to hear.
I love that though, but it is awesome, but
it takes time to learn that, because how many times have you been scrolling or listening and you're like, oh, this program, $27.99,
it's saturated,
$1,000 for 6 months of your time, and it changed your life and it'll get you where you got to be. But does it?
Right, exactly.
Some it does, maybe, but it's like...
You can also find that information for free.
And it's everywhere.
It is.
So it's like you can be distracted and saturated by all this, but you're never going to know this. So if you allow yourself just to,
we've had some pretty good conversations here in the studio when we weren't podcasting or recording.
Yeah,
And
we could have podcasted
yes,
already.
exactly. We
Yeah.
talked about that. And I told you when I was starting up my business, I had to disconnect from social media for that reason.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I was seeking leadership. And while I had great mentors, I was very isolated at that time. And I was very, I don't know, I guess, selective of who was in my inner circle, so to
A
speak.
lot of
at
people
that
don't
time.
take the time to do that.
Right. I had to disconnect from
Mhm.
social media. So I deactivated Facebook. I had a no drinking policy. I had a,
Yeah.
it was it was saying no to a lot of things. And
Same. I get it.
yeah.
I'm not a yes girl.
right. And so I was doing what was best for me, and you just tick people
Yeah.
off. And it was like, I was okay with just kind of weeding those people out of my life that had a problem with me.
Yeah. If
trying to
that
figure
meant
out
it
what I was
changed the
doing.
relationship, then that relationship was meant to change.
Exactly. And that was fine with me. So I go underground when I'm doing the deep work. And so like,
So do I.
I didn't want to go through all that on social media and worry about what I was posting. And I didn't have any reason to post. I shifted my focus towards YouTube because I could find great, public figure mentors in leadership on YouTube that were more reasonable than scrolling
There
on
was a point in
Instagram.
time I chose LinkedIn to scroll instead of Facebook. I
Yes.
was like, business is better than
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, you know how I kind of like weaved out
And
of
then I
that
was like, but you're
addiction?
still scrolling, Whitney. So
But for the
But I
right
hear you.
reasons.
I
It
hear
wasn't
you,
mine
yes.
wasn't about not scrolling. It was just about not being on those platforms
understand.
for, the toxic. There's so much toxicity on there.
so much.
And I didn't want to share anything. I don't like
And that's okay.
I like
And
to
that's okay.
share the results, right? And like, so
Yeah.
when I know, like, from the startup, in a startup, like, you want to show what you've got cooking when the meal is ready.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, that's the proof is in the pudding kind of deal. And
Mhm.
it was for me, because I know, like, when you get into the entrepreneurial space and you're working, there are people that are just going to organically work against you. And it doesn't mean that they're necessarily intentionally malicious, but they
Right.
become
Yeah.
intentionally malicious at times. And it was like, I was experiencing that because nobody wants to, support you if they want to be doing that too.
Well, and it's all about alignment too.
Right.
And you don't know that as you're finding your way to find that alignment. But
Yes.
some things just
I found myself
don't
getting
flow.
bad advice from people.
Yeah.
And that was disheartening because I know, it was
You go into it with a good
misaligned.
Yeah.
Right. And so these were the things, people want to underestimate you and, say those things. And so it's
Mhm.
just it was better for me to keep to myself.
Yeah,
Keep
because
what
you
I
have to quiet those.
Yes.
Call them distractions, the noise. There's a lot of noise and distractions in this world. So
And everyone
I
has an
appreciate
opinion,
that so
right?
much. Everybody has
Yes.
an opinion. And someone could say, I've got an opinion too,
Right.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
But you have to go in. I have to go in.
Yes.
So I relate to that very much. And a lot of people don't understand that.
Right.
Whether I'm in a space like you're describing right now where I'm really like processing and doing a lot, but even on a daily basis, I need some quiet time to
Yes.
recharge.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Because
But
it
a lot
helps
of
you make
people
your business
don't,
decisions with a
Mhm.
clear mind. And
Mhm.
now, you're
And stay connected.
You're not only an
Here.
entrepreneur, but yeah, exactly. You're not only an entrepreneur, but you have a husband and you have a child now.
Mhm.
So your life is, you know what I mean, ever evolving,
Yeah.
and still. And when you started up, had you met your husband yet when you started up? After, right?
Yeah.
You got the ball rolling.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that's
say-
a blessing, I think, because
It's a total blessing.
I could never have started my business with
my
a personal
relationships.
yeah.
My career was always, I used to tell myself, apparently all I'm good at is business
Yeah.
and real estate. Because I just personally, I felt like I just couldn't find that jive,
Yeah.
and part of leaving was making my personal life a priority. And I do say that led me to my husband.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have done some of the work that I've done for me. I wouldn't have had the time. I wouldn't have been able to prioritize
No.
it.
I felt the same.
If I kept that schedule, or it would have looked really different.
I didn't even
and
have
I
a
don't
dog
think
at
it would
that
have been
point.
like the quality that I have.
Yes.
And I'm grateful to say that. But I'm really proud of my
Well, that was
marriage,
part of
and
your
I want
path.
yeah.
Yeah. That led you to
Yeah.
your husband. And that's how I felt too, is that like, that was something that I actually, this is funny. I can't believe I'm going to say it,
You can
but I
say
took
it.
a vow of celibacy at that point.
Okay.
So because I couldn't have any
Yeah, but
distraction.
the power, I understand that.
And I did not want, it was also, I was into these challenges too.
Okay.
So I was like,
Yeah.
I'm cutting this.
I
and
never
this
took it that
out.
far.
Yeah, I did, because I had to
But
do
I
some-
appreciate that
Yes.
about you.
Well, I
Yeah,
was a
that's
bit
strong.
of a party animal back in the day
I've
too.
had my times.
Yes.
Like, I
So
don't
you
always
get
share.
it.
Yeah.
Yes. And with that being said, when you're trying to make, you're disconnecting from kind of how people once knew you.
Yeah.
In the mental health
Yes,
field.
the evolution of
Yes.
life. Yeah, I'm not out in all the parties that I
No.
used to be at, and you don't see me where you used to see me.
And in the
'cause
mental
I've
health
grown and
space,
changed and
yes.
evolved. You know,
In the mental health space, alcohol is a huge part of that.
Oh my gosh.
Debriefing process.
Yeah.
So like that was what that
can't get a
network
clearer
does.
mind if you're
Everybody
never-
meets after,
Yeah.
debriefs the day, and has a couple drinks. That's the culture. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And so, and
It's everywhere.
generationally too, like with mentors, that's what my mentors did. That's where I met with my mentors, was at the bar, because that's where they
My
went.
old company,
I'm
happy
not-
hour every day.
yes, and
Like
I'm not
Tuesday,
judging that.
I've got 3 drinks, and I'm like, happy Tuesday.
Yeah.
What am I doing? See you in the
Right.
morning, lunch. Oh yeah, we'll have a cocktail with. It was part of the culture.
That was
I
the
was
culture.
drinking a ton.
Yes, I was
drinking
too.
a ton.
I was drinking a ton, so much that I questioned whether or not I was an alcoholic, and I
Yeah.
really wanted to know.
Isn't that funny?
It was. So I was like,
functioning great.
yeah,
I
and
was
I was the only one
kicking ass.
questioning. So I was like, I'm
Yeah.
the only one like questioning whether
Because
or
you're
not.
in touch with it's good to have those voices.
So
you know?
I had, when I did, when I was starting up my business, that was part of my process, was okay, no drinking. Let's see if I can do that. Turns out I don't even really drink. So I
Good for
was
you.
like,
Yeah.
it was interesting, because I just had a guest, Craig Ballantyne, on my podcast, and he said, it's tribe. It comes back to tribe.
Yeah.
And, that's who I was surrounding myself with. And I can talk to anybody. I'm still friends with anybody that drinks, does anything.
Oh yeah.
I just choose to abstain
'Cause you're good
because
being-
it doesn't serve me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it used to be a good time, and I love hanging out with people, and when they're in good spirits, I don't judge it, and I can go out to
Yeah.
a bar and all those things.
Yeah.
As long as you don't need me to drink
Yeah.
if I don't feel like it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So I'm good with it.
Yeah.
And it turned out like I could do all of those things, and that served me best, just kind of disconnecting, so I could do kind of the deep work to figure
You can
everything out.
reframe things that way. You know?
Refresh. I had a great perspective, and to the point of not being attached at the time. I didn't even have a pet. So that was like the blessings for me, was that I watch other
You could really give it
entrepreneurs
your
that
full
have different
focus.
circumstances,
Mhm.
that have a family already, or they have, they have a family and pets, and they're going to quit their job and they're going to start a business, but they already have a family team that's relying on them. And I didn't have that. So I was, but I also had a rough startup. So I was sleeping on my friend's couch, then in an air mattress in the first office. And it was like, I couldn't imagine having somebody attached to me.
Yeah.
So in any capacity.
Before I had Kevin, my husband, and now my son, I feel like I was alone for a really long time.
Yes.
Figuring it out.
It's lonely on Entrepreneur.
I've been super lonely.
Yes.
And then I got over lonely,
Yeah.
and it became empowerment of being good with being on my own, and seeing how that can translate into, I guess, just confidence in other places, not ego, ego aside, we all have an ego, but I really do not operate from an ego place.
No, you're a very humble person. I get everything that you're saying, because it's like I'm hearing.
But it
my
can get
story
real
through
lonely,
you.
and you gotta get okay with that.
Yes,
You
I was
have to
okay
be
with
okay
being
with
lonely.
that. Yeah.
There were nights that it was like, there were times that it was
Get over the poor me.
Yes, it was distressing, right?
Yeah.
And so
I cried poor me for a minute while
Yeah.
I was going through my things, and then there was just, at some point, the switch turned.
It happens for guys too. It does. And so, but I turned to working out. And so fitness was my thing. And so like when I felt, I think it's important for, both sexes to ride out the emotions. You have to go through it.
That's
you
so
have to feel
refreshing.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I needed to feel
For
it all
anyone to
out.
say, let alone a man, right?
Yeah,
Like, you
no, I
know,
appreciate that. And it was what it was. And I was, I came up in a generation where you don't talk about that stuff.
Oh,
And
still.
you know what I mean? You're going through all your
Yeah.
stuff, and you mentioned, your past traumas and things like that. Those things pop up when you least expect it. So when I was starting up, and
just when you think you got
those
there's
lonely
more.
times,
Yeah.
right? Those lonely times when you were kind of like, okay, I'm on Entrepreneurial Island, but I'm doing the work. And I felt the best I ever did when I was going through that time, even though, you know, I was on the friend's couch and transitioned from my house and my employer and my ex.
Well,
and all that
sometimes having
stuff.
like less.
Yeah, was more. It was huge for me.
Yeah.
It was a game changer because
yeah.
I went from a 4-bedroom house, 3-car garage, all of that stuff to
Yeah.
like moving into my friend's place. And then, you know, then
we really do have a lot of stuff in this life. So it's amazing when you can strip some of that back.
To let everything go. Because when I moved out, it was with my backpack and my Mustang.
Yeah.
So that
I've never done that.
Yeah.
But that's a test, right?
Yes.
For yourself.
Yep.
But you come out one way or the other.
Yeah.
So.
And that's what it was like. And I kind of knew that someone had asked me if I ever questioned failing. And I was like, well, I'm shocked that I didn't.
Yeah.
Because I'm the first to underestimate myself back then. And, but it never occurred to me that would happen just because I had said this was what I was going to do. And I always do what I say I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So I didn't really question it from like that egocentric standpoint. Like you mentioned, like we all have ego.
Yeah.
But I guess that was just inherent confidence.
Well, and knowing yourself, right?
Yeah. I was like but I said I was going to do it. So no, I didn't think I was going to fail. And I don't mean that cocky.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I would say to myself, worst case, if I do, I can go work for somebody else.
Right.
Again,
or you pivot because I knew I was a rock star employee.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
actually, I'm not taking this risk for nothing.
And I had a lot of people try to headhunt me at that time.
Yeah.
Because they knew I made the transition and they're like, hey, man, it's really hard to start up a business and it's much easier to work for someone else. You want to come work for me? And I was like, I sure don't.
I remember I took a phone interview with a big company right after and I hung up and I was like, nope.
Right.
Nope.
I got offered more money.
The shiny pretty is there, but the day to day, you know what that looks like. Yeah. I'm not doing that.
And that's why I was so grateful to go work in that other experience for the 2 months because that was more money too.
Yeah.
It was much more money. And
and it's another thing you hear, but if you're chasing the money, sometimes it works out for people, right? But it's like through the entrepreneurial, you're diving into yourself, you're finding that passion, you're finding, you're not focused on, you got to hit points of money.
It's funny that you bring that up because and
I'm still learning that more and more now. Like, I do what I do and obviously there's money involved and I'm thankfully come up in a great place with that. But the more that I take things I'm passionate about and weave them into that, it's like flourishing.
Amazing. Yes. And you brought me back to, I had a flashback while you're sitting here saying that. I remember when I formed my LLC, my paperwork online, I had a Post-it and I wrote, money is the outcome, not the goal.
Look at that.
On that Post-it. That was exactly what I wrote. Because I had this whole process when I was starting my business. You and I have talked off camera, so like I'm a weirdo about all that stuff. So like I pay attention to the signs and I was in tune with myself and I knew what my mission was. I knew I was mission ready and I was mission focused, right? And so like I had all my Post-its and I wrote this is how I do. This is my process. I had all my books bookmarked with all my highlighters and all this stuff, and this is what I was doing and this is where I was going, and I had the vision and I just...
Have you always been someone to like love learning about yourself?
I have. I got into that.
There's the personality tests and things, but even it can drill down from there.
I did kind of like through
because I have, and I was talking with someone recently and I was like, well, who doesn't love to learn about themselves? And they were like, you would be surprised. A lot of people really avoid that whole topic. Yeah. And it was like, what? Because I'm like, tell me
self-exploration.
But I'm hearing that in you too. And
and it was just, once I took a deep dive into that, it was like, you can't stop. You want to know more. Right.
And there's always more.
And there's always more. There's so many levels and layers.
Yeah. And perspectives.
Yes.
I mean, so many.
And then I was shocking the shit out of myself because I was like,
I've changed, like my paradigm shifts the last year, let alone a lot
can happen in a year. Mentally.
So much has happened for me this last year internally.
It was interesting because I thought while I was, because I've worked in the mental health field since I was 18, so going on 28 years, and I have at that time I was like really managing kind of, I've just been aware of mental health, and like that's why I was like, no drinking, focus on yourself,
Mhm.
eat clean, go to the
Mhm.
gym, work
It
out,
translates.
take in nature. Like my office was nature. It was my Mustang. I would drive to the park, and I'd walk 8 miles, and then there's like little workout stations all throughout that 8 mile loop.
Mhm.
And so I'd be doing pull-ups and like whatever they had for me to work out there, I would do that. And then I would have my notepad, my audio books, and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And it was kind of like self-exploration, mental health,
Mhm.
and personal and professional development all baked in.
Yeah.
And it was like, but I had nothing at that time.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was like,
Yeah.
but I felt so good.
Yeah.
So it was like, but it was like, you're kind of like guarded of your mental health. You're protective of your mental health, because I could have easily had another mindset where it was poor
Mhm.
me,
Mhm.
like, holy shit, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Like I had no, you know what I mean?
And I'm sure
like,
those
safety
moments
net.
happen.
Yeah,
you
they
know,
did. They
like,
did.
They
during
pop
those,
up, but you gotta,
during those lonely times when it hits you.
Yeah.
Like, because you can't control what's going to happen when your head hits the pillow.
Yeah.
And you're trying to fall asleep, and then it's like, oh yeah, now we're going to play that game,
Yeah.
the self-doubt game.
Yeah,
like, it
the
creeps in there.
subconscious creeps in.
Yeah.
For sure.
Or those like past experiences, past traumas, past relationships,
Mhm.
or things
And that's
that
why, like, I'm just a huge component. Take them head on.
Yes.
You know, once you get to a place where
lean
you're
into
able.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I leaned into all of it because
The shadow
it was,
work, if you will.
Yes.
If you're familiar.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it was like my dark night at the soul during that time. And it
Mhm.
was kind of just taking all those experiences. And it was always at night when I would put my head down on the pillow and I would hear somebody that said something ignorant to me, like underestimating me, or
Mhm.
like, what do you mean you're starting a business? Like, are you kidding me? Are you manic? Like,
Yeah.
what? I would
Yeah.
hear something like
Yeah.
that. And I was like, those were the people that I had to disconnect from. But it's always like those things would
And then
replay
you're like, why
at
is this
night.
in my head?
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
like, shit.
Get
Because
out
they
of
were
here.
someone that I had at the time
But that can be a
respected.
motivator.
It was a motivator, because something that was hard for me was respecting somebody that did not respect me. And if it was a mentor or someone that
Yeah.
was in a leadership position, and
Yeah.
I'm sure like you had all the great mentors in your respective field of work, and I had mine, but there was also good mentors paired with not so great mentors.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you experienced that too. And
Yeah.
sometimes if you're coming up with them, you respect them, you don't see yourself on their level,
Yeah.
but they don't ever see you coming up to their level.
Yeah.
And they're not going to.
Right.
That was hard for me to take once I realized, like,
Yeah.
oh, you're not who I thought you were, as far as
Right.
like a balanced ego.
Yeah.
And like, because leaders make leaders. And
Right.
if you have someone like Natalie, you want to pull her up with
Totally.
you.
And it
You don't
does
wanna
start from the top.
Yes.
You know, like,
And that's
another
how I
cheesy
always felt.
tagline, but
Totally.
it starts at the top.
It
You know?
does.
So it all translates.
It does. And it's disheartening. Did you ever experience that with any?
Oh yeah, I left a company, and it's the word integrity is coming to mind because I saw decisions being made that like were questionable.
Yeah.
And I was someone who would have to support those efforts, and I felt put in a position like I didn't want to sign off on the things that I was supposed to
Yeah.
because I didn't like the way that it was going down, essentially.
Because
So
you have to put your name on that.
I had to put my name on it, and I wasn't willing to. And so I spoke up. I could have sat there and been like, this is my job, but I didn't feel comfortable, and it was an ethical thing for me. And so instead I spoke up, and I ended up leaving the company.
Because it served you best.
Yeah. And at the time it was like stressful and all that. But again, like, who knew? I had such a strong instinct inside, and
Yeah.
I'm not willing to risk my integrity.
That's fantastic.
So,
That's a beautiful
thankfully,
thing. Yeah, I
right?
was the same.
But it's amazing to me how many people, and I don't know, maybe I'm not a nervous person. I don't operate by fear by any means,
Right.
but I'm not willing to risk certain things.
That's how it was for me too. That's why I was willing to take that leap and start up the way that I did, because I was like, well, I have my integrity about me, and that's all you can really have at the end of the day is I love.
Well, we all have choices. And
yeah.
honestly, like, that's something that I don't think a lot of people realize. Not to go off on a tangent, but taking myself back to before I left my company, just allowing myself to know that I had a choice, and, my relationships and my loyalty and all that. But like, I don't have to stay here.
I love that you're
forever.
going here.
I
Please
don't
go
have
on the tangent.
to.
Yes,
Like,
I love it.
I have a choice.
Yes.
Like it's such a breakthrough.
Yes.
And we all have choices. So how many
will
people do you
stay where
know?
they're miserable. More
What do
than
you-
not.
Here's my question. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you going to do about
Yes.
it? I don't know. I
You
can't
know,
because of this. Well, you could if, and just that challenging of the thinking of,
yes.
you don't have to fit into the square box
No.
if you don't want to.
Right.
If you're cool with it, stay there.
I love that
Live
you
there.
brought this up because
But what works for you?
Yeah.
So many people skip over that in their life and it's sad.
And they'll stay where they're miserable. So
Yeah.
like that was something, this is a topic I don't think I've hit on the podcast yet. And I'm so glad you brought
And I've
it
been
up.
miserable before too,
Yeah.
but it was like all of a sudden my
But
brain kicked in and I was like, do something about it.
Yeah, I think I
know?
mentioned to you that I kind of stayed 5 years too long in both my personal and professional relationships.
Yeah.
Where my soul wasn't being fed and my needs weren't being met as far as like professional growth and all that
like you
stuff.
don't even know what your soul needs. So
Exactly.
like finding what that is
Right.
a whole path in itself, you know?
And so I had come to that conclusion myself, like I don't have to stay, right? Like make a choice.
Yeah.
And so
and
that's
that
what
lifts
I did.
just like a weight. And like then there's
Yes.
that next layer. And once
Yes.
it's a thing.
I still have people message me to this day when I was starting up that were like, oh my God, that's amazing that you started up your own business and I want to work for you and I'm going to quit and I'm not happy where I am. And I still get those 9 years later, same people message me. They never left. They're still at the same place.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is that I came to the conclusion because I always believed the person, right? I was like, yeah, cool. Another team member and like, we're going to do the thing.
Yeah. You could start mapping it out. Of
Yeah.
how
But
it
like
could
they never
integrate.
come and like, cause a lot of people are afraid of change and it
Absolutely.
really comes down to a fear-based mentality and
Yeah.
people have, people think they need their benefits and if they need seniority and they need, they have the comfort of, I get it. Because I was there too.
I get it.
Like you have
okay.
all those things.
Yeah.
Totally. You have your vacation time. I had all that. You know what I mean? And it was, it's a nice security blanket.
And then I think back, I'm like, man, I worked for how many years to get 21 days to myself out of 365? Wow.
Right. And so like I was just kind of like going through all that work in my head. And I was just thinking like, now I observe.
No disrespect to the companies of America.
No, right. And I observe now and I just see people that are more comfortable staying. And a lot of people, this is what I find disheartening is that people will stay miserable in a job just so they have a finger to point and complain if they're not happy with their employer or if they work somewhere because there's good employers and bad employers.
Totally.
I have both.
Totally.
And so and I appreciate the good employers and I want to be one.
Yeah.
And
Good
I think I am one and I think you are too. And I know so many entrepreneurs that are, but there's so many people in leadership positions that are villainized too for holding people to higher standards and holding them accountable. Accountability is huge. And I watch a lot of people come in. I've been in business.
And the approach of accountability is huge too.
Oh yeah. Well, of course, delivery
sides,
is
but
everything.
Like how you go about holding someone accountable.
Yes.
But I mean,
even just addressing somebody on an accountability issue is just out the window these days because everyone's so apt to just throw in the towel and quit, even if they've just
or the emotional piece kicks in, which I'm all about acknowledging emotions, but it can get a little crazy sometimes.
Absolutely.
These days,
I think it's good to work with people. I've put more people on performance improvement plans.
Yeah. And you want them to do well ultimately.
Yeah. The goal is
drill down and figure it out.
If they've even gotten to the point where if it's someone that I really like, but it's a continuous issue on just something kind of that's fixable, but they have to put in the effort, then I'm willing to do the performance improvement plan. And that sometimes can be up to 90 days. And, they've already probably should have been let go, but I've had those those work out very successfully for people where they're able to fix the issue. And maybe it means a schedule change. Maybe it means, just spending more time.
Yeah. Because if you can make one small change that impacts the way that person performs or motivates or whatever it is, like why wouldn't you?
I don't think anybody's doing anybody
but
any
having
favors.
the conversation to figure that out, people are
taking
like,
the time.
Just do it, just figure it out, or people don't slow down and engage.
Exactly.
It's the relationship.
It's relationship building. And I think that I also think no one's doing anybody any favors staying in a position that they're miserable in. So like I think off board immediately. If you're not happy where you're working, you are going to be a liability and not an asset, not only to employer and
Oh,
your
yeah.
team, but to yourself. You're a liability
Yeah.
to yourself because you're never going to be happy. You're
Mhm.
going to be miserable. And that's no fun to be around someone
Mhm.
that's miserable all the time because they don't like where they're at.
Yep.
And it's not even necessarily they don't like where they're at from a work standpoint. They just don't like where they're at in life.
Yeah.
Whether it be,
Yeah, it could be one or the other.
Yeah,
Or
it could-
just finding a misalignment in
Right.
that work.
their relationship could
Yeah.
weave into that makes them miserable if they're in a toxic relation,
Mhm.
toxic personal relationship.
Mhm.
And then they're coming to work and they're miserable and they're bringing the team down. And then you're, again, a liability, not an asset to you or your team,
Yeah,
because
to
it's making
everything.
people want to, get away from you.
Mhm.
It's toxic culture.
And you
That's
know what that
unfortunate.
all comes back to for me? Knowing yourself.
Yeah,
And being willing to be that.
absolutely.
And doing the things to align your outward with your inward.
Yes. I love your
I'm
journey.
just seeing
It's
such a misalignment in general.
all
And
over
so
the
many
place.
people are aligned.
Yes.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on.
It's
out
very
there.
misleading too when you get, like, speaking to this exactly right here. It's very misleading when you get on social media and you're looking at, I think, some of the things that we've touched on, like spiritual alignment, whatever you want to call it, just
Sure.
getting in line and touch with
Yeah.
yourself. Spirituality and those types of things can be a beautiful cloak for all kinds of toxic behavior.
Mhm.
And like you get those public figure
Yes.
influencers that are hiding behind that, but that's, to your
Correct.
point, not who you get when you're there with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And that's
you're able
unfortunate.
to decipher. You should be
Yes.
able to.
Your body
you know?
will tell you. So
Yeah.
like when I get in the energy of somebody, my body tells me.
Same.
It tells me how I feel when I'm in it, and it tells me how I feel when I get out of it.
I had
when
to
I'm at
hone
home.
in on what to do with that because I was getting feelings like that where
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I thought I was good here, but I don't feel good here.
It almost
It's
felt
like
a
my
panic
energy.
attack.
Yeah, like something is not good here, but it took me a minute to figure out in some senses. What
Yeah,
that
you'll
was.
feel it in your gut. You'll feel it in your
Mhm.
stomach, and ultimately your bones.
Well, and even like your attitude,
Yeah.
just your demeanor. I'm a generally, and I've seen myself act differently.
Yes.
When I'm in places that I just really shouldn't have been in.
Yeah, it was the same for me. It was like you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and
Mhm.
that like really hit home for me. I can't remember when and where I heard that for the first time, but I was like, yes. I was
Mhm.
like, that's it right there. And
Yeah.
that was like around that time was when I was kind of coming up with the inner circle and the concept of the podcast. And it was like I had started getting on planes and flying out to different business networking events to just meet different people. And if it was only one person I met, you know what I mean? And at the very first
Yeah.
one I went to, I made a great connection, and it was worth the flight. It was worth the plane
Yeah.
ticket, and it was worth the trip. And I come back to that, and I started seeking out, just getting around the right people that were uplifting,
Yeah.
had a similar story,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, that I could connect with and that I resonated with. And that was huge for me.
Well, even just
because it validated
connecting
everything.
with you over this, I
Yeah.
left here last time thinking like, here's Mike. I've been physically in the general same area as
Yeah.
him. I know him. I haven't really reached out to you at all. But it felt good to have that conversation and to remember who Mike is
Yeah.
and like
Well,
know
we hit
that
it
the
off
good
right
is
from the
out
get.
there.
Yeah.
But it
we're just
also
busy.
told me like, look, don't get stuck.
Yeah.
Keep looking out, because you just never know. And I get bored, so I
Yeah.
like to switch things up. I'm all
Yes.
about change and changing things and transformation and all that.
I like
Personally,
that.
professionally.
I was gonna ask you too, like, so throughout the process, I had taken on all these new wellness practices for myself because I was getting in touch. Well, I also had picked up
I've learned so many new ones.
due to
There's so
stress.
much.
I
Yeah.
was not managing my stress, right? So like during that time, it was like everything was great, but everything was crazy at
Yeah.
the same time.
It can be both.
It was both.
It can totally be both.
It was
I've
both.
been both for a couple of years now.
Yeah, same.
You know?
And so but then all the curveballs come too.
Yeah.
And when you're starting up the business, like I think we talked about this the last time you were here, and I had mentioned when I was starting up, everything I thought was going to be difficult came easy to me. Everything that I was intimidated by when I was starting up my business came easy to me. But everything I thought that was going to be easy was harder to do than I
Interesting.
thought. And it was like, okay. And then curveballs came. And I knew that things weren't going to be just doors were going to
Yeah,
open
you
for
just
me.
don't know what that
I had a
looks
lot
like
of connections
until you
in
do
the
it.
field, and I never expected that
any one person would open a door for me, but I didn't think there would be people on the other side of the door that I knew put with their foot on the other side of it, not letting me
With
in
like
either.
yeah.
So that was stressful. And so like all the different curveballs coming at me, adding up, just took a toll on my immune system, and I ended up with alopecia areata. And so that was like a huge autoimmune thing, and trying to manage that, I found my way to juicing. So like bone broth, drinking bone broth, juicing, getting to know my the produce section, you know, at the international food store, where I'm juicing like beetroot and turmeric and taro root. I'm eating taro root and all of these things. Juicing became a huge practice for me. So it was like,
such a good,
it's
like, I picture like an IV, like direct nutrients right in where your system needs it. You know? So
that was huge for me. And that was just one of the practices that I got into to kind of recorrect, you know, my misalignment with that. Because when I got the diagnosis, getting online and doing the research on it, because my doctor had absolutely no information for me. Yeah. And so they were like, like 2% of the population get that. And I was like, okay, but
do you
what
still have that?
Yeah, you always have it forever.
It never goes away.
Because mine was so aggressive that I was like, well, fuck, I'm gonna get a hair transplant. Like, I'm not shy. Yeah. Like, I'll fucking get it fixed.
Yeah,
so
I probably
it was
would
like,
too.
but the way like all my hair, the way that alopecia works is it started on the back of my head. It looked like my barber nicked me. Okay. It was like the size of a little pea. Yeah. And then it spread, and it was just all across the back of my head. I lost all the hair on the back. So I thought, well, that's interesting. Yeah. And so I was like, I'll just go down to Detroit and I'll get a bald fade. Yeah. Like, I'll have them fade.
I can make this work.
Yeah, right. I was like, but that didn't work, because with alopecia comes like vitiligo and a skin condition. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. I actually have a girlfriend that I knew in high school who had it.
It's super rare. And for a girl, I did meet a girl that had it, and she gave me her perspective as a young girl having it. And I was like, fuck, because for a girl, that your hair is everything, you know? And so she talked about having that through high school and college. I was like, fuck, that had to be, you know, it's traumatic, because you do the research on it, and it sounds vain, but it's your hair and you've had it, you know what I mean? And
well, and too, like at, you know, younger ages, just like fitting in. And the social aspect
and the way that it falls out, the way that it fell out for me was, it was all these weird circles. And then they grew, and it was like in my beard, and it was everywhere, my eyebrows. And like mine became so aggressive. My dermatologist thought I was going to have alopecia totalis, which is you lose all the hair. Yeah. And he didn't tell me that in the beginning, but he thought that. And once I started growing it back, he told me that. He was like, yours was really aggressive. And I was very stressed.
You're like, thanks for keeping that to yourself, I think.
I'm glad he did.
Also, because it turned out the way that it did, right? But
because he was supportive of me doing the alternative methods, the juicing, the bone broth, sauna, and I got into sauna and, you know, floating the salt water.
Have you ever worked with any like energy workers?
Yes. Okay. And so that was like really what took me down to that path. So I was learning that side of myself. Yeah. Because you talked about that you know, just a little bit ago. And it was another,
just more to the body than I knew.
And I was into it. Right. And so I was
and
like,
it works.
Who knew I would be into this? And so because it wasn't like traditional medicine, and because I never really had any ailments plague me like that. Nothing had ever happened. And so doing the research on that, I was like, wow, a lot can really happen traumatically when you're diagnosed with something like that, because you're watching it happen so fast and rapidly. And then people were not respectful. Like, I would be in town, I'd be grabbing a coffee, and someone would be standing behind me, and they'd be like, do you have cancer? Like, what's going on in the back of your head with your hair? And like, people would just flat out say things like that.
No sense, like emotional.
So then like I was isolating even more. This was all like while I was starting up the business, right? And so I was like on isolation island.
All right, well, how many more punches can I take?
Yes.
Come on.
It was weird.
I'm ready.
It was weird. So
but you know what? It's like pushing you in a new I don't know. Things look hairy for a minute when something beautiful is coming.
It did. It was kind of like you could feel like looking back, you kind of see like a rebirth happening there. Yeah. Because it was like I was building up my immune system. What was interesting too is that like I really went hardcore on building the immune system just prior to COVID. So when COVID hit, I never knew. Yeah. I never got COVID. Yeah. So I didn't get a vaccination either. And so I worked the whole time. My business is is essential. And so like I worked through that whole period, but the year prior, like although that couple of years prior, I had been building it out of my immune system.
Yeah.
So I don't know if like that was like keeping
You're
me,
like,
getting me prepared
you're
for
being
battle
guided
when COVID
in
hit.
the right way.
Truly, like I looked back at that and I
Yeah.
thought it was weird because I was like, how did I never
Great.
get COVID?
Yeah.
That I ever knew of anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I got it, but it was fine.
Never
That
knew
sounds-
that. If
it
I
was
did,
fine.
I never knew.
Yeah.
I worked
I worked
the whole
through
time.
it and I was okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but I gotta say, like juicing was a huge part of that, and I found my way to locally too.
Actually, yeah, my juice business was essential.
I was
during
gonna
that
say,
time, so we were cranking it out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I remember because you have to.
We opened 6 months before all that.
Yes,
so
you
it
had
was a hell of a time in business, but
yeah, I found my way to well, because juicing can be. I enjoy it actually, so it's therapeutic. I years ago bought the power juicer, Jack LaLanne, old school. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so, but that's not for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And so, because it's a lot of work, and then you have the pulp, and people always, they're like, what do
I
you
had
do
a
with all the-"
juicer too, and I would do it. And then fast forward, now that I know what I know, I was like, man, I was an amateur. So now I got like, I can make a mean smoothie and a juice just because I understand how the ingredients work together better now after opening a business.
Studied too, right? Well, I was doing it,
and it just
for my
takes time,
immune
like
system.
anything, to get familiar with it. But
I was invested. You were doing it, for wellness and for your business too, and you had to learn it, because you're a good businesswoman. But I was doing it for to save my immune system, and so I was super invested in learning about the ingredients. And I would juice onions and garlic and drink it. And it was
I don't know what face I just made, but I've never heard someone tell me they've juiced an onion. Oh my God.
If you want a natural high, juice some onions and garlic and drink
really?
it. Yes.
I believe you.
Oh my God.
Onions are one food that I don't love to eat, but I feel like I would try that challenge
learned that
once.
onion juice can help
Next
grow your
time
hair.
we get together, we're going to do an onion juice session.
Well, I love it too, because you have the Beyond Juice juicery. You got involved in that franchise, and you have a shot. Yours.
I do. I actually, so I put the name on it, but I wasn't the original person who put the combo together, I have to say. But once I saw it and nobody was doing anything with it, I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's a hot shot, which is lemon juice, cayenne pepper, ginger, mixed with wheatgrass.
I love all those ingredients. Well, I would come in and get that shot. That's
so
how we got chatting more.
Yeah, and I was exposed to that. My old company, the original Beyond Juice, was in Birmingham, Michigan, and that's where I used to work.
Yeah.
And so I was their number one fan, and I used to kind of joke and say, you guys need to come to the Clarkston area. We don't have anything like this out there, and it's the perfect market. So blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, I was working for myself. They were franchising. I was able to hook that up. I didn't know what wheatgrass was.
Right.
And so I was pretty new on it when I had met you. And it tastes like grass.
Yes.
It's like sweet grass,
I love
basically.
It. Yeah. People love it or hate it.
The feeling that it gives you, it is a natural high like you have not felt, from your gut to your immune to, I could go on and on. The health
It's great for
benefits
cancer
for
patients. It has huge.
We literally would buy trays of grass, cut it, put it in the machine, and it essentially dehydrates the nutrients from the physical grass. So you mix that with the cayenne, the lemon, the ginger.
Yes.
And we named it Get With It.
Yes.
Wit as in Whitney, but it gets you with it.
Yeah.
So
that's why you win all those Grammys. Because you're smart like that. Yes.
So yeah, there was a time, not right now. I am doing a juice every morning right now. But I was doing one of those almost every morning at that time.
Well, that's so good too. And I remember I came into Beyond one day, you were there, and I was telling you my process for the wheatgrass because, well, you have the wheatgrass juicer.
Right.
I just had the Jack LaLanne, and it's really hard. Like I would buy a thing of wheatgrass like this.
Yeah.
And I would cut it.
Yeah.
And
that's how we would too.
Yes. And then I would trim it, or I would twist it. And
I just wonder if you were getting all the.
Well, that was the problem.
All the stuff.
So, because
the wheatgrass juicer is pretty. It's a thing.
It gets all of it. Yeah. I've seen it done. And so like at the time I had already had my juicer, and I looked into the wheatgrass thing, and I was like, fuck, it was so expensive. Yeah. But so my process was I would take a lemon, I would scrub it because all the nutrients on a lemon are in the rind.
Yeah.
And so it's like the best part of it. And so I would take an apple core and put it through the top of the lemon, core it out, like just pull it out like that. And then I would twist all the wheatgrass and stuff it inside the lemon because
that's really smart.
Yes. And then I would really smart. I would stick a piece of turmeric.
And it could grab it better too in the juicer.
Because if you just put it in your juicer, you're getting nothing. It just
it's going to run through it.
It whisks into the pulp catcher.
Yeah.
So I learned that.
You might get one speck of
nutrient. I learned that with my first plant. I was like, well, I'm like, this is garbage. So I came up with that. I did the lemon, put it in there, and then I would also take like a piece of turmeric, like the size of my pinky, and stuff that in too.
Yep.
So the turmeric.
It's actually the right portion.
Yes. Perfect. I know I'm on the right track. Yes. Instinctually, that's what I thought. And then I could put it in. I could get it in because the apple core is like the size of like your
not so finger. Different. Yeah.
And then you still have all the meat inside the lemon too. Mm-hmm. So getting the grass in there, the turmeric, and then sometimes if I could work it in there, a piece of ginger too. Mm-hmm. That was like amazing
Ginger's
for your immune system.
Oh my God. Ginger is one of it's not bad for anything.
It's so good. Yes. For everything.
Turmeric, inflammation, all that.
Yep. All the health benefits. And it turned everything around for me. And that was
But the onions I still don't know about.
I was that into growing my hair back. I was
honestly, I can do stuff when I know there's a benefit.
Yeah.
Like, it could be the worst. I'll be like, I don't care. Just get it down because I want the outcome.
Well,
so
that's kind of how I got started.
Situation.
I used to do that the other way with alcohol because that's how I convinced myself to juice the stuff that didn't taste good because based on the shots that I used to do, I was like, you used to drink Jägermeister and every nasty whiskey under the sun. You can do this. Yeah. So it was like for a while. And that was destroying my system. You know what I mean? I was like, I can do this for benefits.
Correct.
So that's kind of
good for you, Mike.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it made good. I made good on it. I was able to restore all my hair. You know, you have to keep up on it.
Yeah.
When I went to because I was seriously considering the hair transplant, but they told me when I went, I was like, can't I just move it from where it grows really thick and put it in the back where the spots are? And they're like, no,
there's more to it.
You can't with an alopecia patient, you can't get it. They won't give you they won't give you a hair transplant. So
I guess that doesn't shock me, but I don't know enough about it.
Because you have it forever.
Okay.
Because they're like, we could do it for you, but you would still lose the hair. Yeah. Right. I was like, oh, I'm glad that you told me that.
Let me try another route.
Yeah, because it'd be like $10,000, please, and then it falls out.
See you in a month. Yeah,
that would blow.
Don't do that.
So I'm
glad they were honest and upfront with you
totally
versus taking your money and
letting
you figure it out.
Actually, they were supposed to tell me that before I even went to the consultation. They're like, oh, we didn't know you had alopecia. No one asked you, and I was like, no. I was like, oh, they're
nice
like, you're excluded. I was like, okay. So that just made me take my health more into my hands. I was like, this is doable. I can restore this. And then I just went that holistic route. But how is the journey with Beyond over there?
It's good. We, like I said, we opened just before COVID. So our beginning was like, our original performa changed.
Yeah.
But we put our heads down and we did the work and we got through it and we had our 5-year anniversary last fall.
Cool.
So it's year 6 and
so fast.
Yeah.
Seems like just
yes yesterday. And no. It's both.
Yeah.
It's both.
I get it.
It's been a journey.
The days are long, but the years fly by. Mm-hmm. And I can remember.
Same with becoming a mother.
Yeah.
Days are long, years fly by.
Your boy's a cutie.
Thank you. Yes. He is a sweet, sweet boy. He's a boy. Like
he just had a birthday.
Boy. Yeah. He turned 2 on Valentine's Day.
Yeah. It was a cool birthday party.
Yeah, we had fun. Becoming a mom it's something I've always wanted. And it happened much later in my life than I would have expected, but I'm grateful because the right pieces fell into place before it happened. So obviously super grateful for that.
I think it's the right time because you watch so many people that aren't ready and just like
you're never ready.
Truly, right? But I mean, like
I had my shit together.
Yes,
but it was a challenge for me, not in like the mothering sense.
Yeah,
like he was not just. I had taken on so much.
Yeah,
and it really made me realize all the outward things that I was giving my energy to.
Right.
And I just couldn't do that like I used to.
Yep.
And some of it was probably misaligned with who I was or where I was at anyway.
Yeah.
So just a good kind of kick in the butt to
absolutely
look at it with a new lens.
That was me giving birth to my business.
But
so I had attributed, I've never had a child.
Well, and being on my own all these years, like, sure, I could go home and have my moment, but like, no, now I'm going home and I'm responsible for this child. Like I can't. So I have found a way to kind of reset my whole baseline is what I'll say the last 2 years. And like forced to an extent, but needed to also. So it's been amazing, but it's really pushed me into, gosh, I don't want to say this, but I'm gonna like the best version of myself so far.
I love it. It is.
Because I've had no choice and
Yeah.
I want to, but like things changed.
Yeah.
So guess what? Things have changed for me, and I'm good with that. And it's just like, I'm all about just being in full alignment of what feels good inside is what I'm doing on the outside, and like, period.
That makes you a better businesswoman
Period.
too. Like your baby is making you a better businesswoman too, because you're making healthy choices for you and your family.
Yeah. And like my voice, I've never been someone to not speak up for myself, but I've realized like I care about people, so I play nice sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm going to play mean or anything, but like I can't always worry about all of these outside things and people anymore when it's not feeling good here, you know? So I've just become really empowered. Kind of bold, empowered, and resilient. And if it's not flowing, if it doesn't come naturally, if it's not making me excited or empowered, then it's not for me. And that's okay. I feel the
same. That's smart.
And like with love,
exactly.
But,
same. I've learned to do the same. I've been on the same journey. And in my field, I work with a lot of families. Yeah. So I'm not a parent, but I do have a godson, and I've been working with families since I was 18 years old. Yeah. So 28 years. And, sometimes, you have to, like you said, it's not about playing mean. It's just about disconnecting from situations where each other isn't serving each other. Yeah. Right. And just kind of.
And like, if everyone could do, me being a better me and you being a better you, it just, everything around you is better too. People pick up on that, and the hope is that everyone's doing that for themselves.
Even doing business
to break down some of the I don't know, the crazy.
Yes, right? Exactly. Because it's a lot. It's a lot. Everybody has a lot going on, right? And their own families. And
it's
their
all
own
understandable.
Lives. Yeah, totally. And so with, just in that network too, like in any network, in the mental health space or real estate, investing, all those things, not every business deal is a good business deal. Not every deal is the right deal for you.
And you have to be willing to walk away.
Right. And I said, when I started up my business, I said no more than yes. Yeah. Because I had already had so much seasoning in the field, and I got to watch a lot of mentors and a lot of people with businesses similar to mine start up and what that looks like. So you have people that are going to build you up, people that are going to tear you down, people that love to build you up and tear you down. And I watched all that, and I was able to.
It can be both.
I observed all of it throughout the 20 years prior to me starting my business. I watched it with my mentors. I watched it with my employer. I was like, wow, okay, well, I don't want to put myself in that position, and I don't like to be a yes person. Yeah. So I said no more than yes, meaning that if it was out of my capacity, if it was out of my capacity and I knew it, because I was getting a lot of offers to build my business quite quickly. And I knew that I would just make a mess of things if I said yes. And you can. And I've watched people do that. Everyone will say yes because it earns you a great reputation because you said yes. And so when I said no, I was pissing people off. Yeah. And then people wanted to work against me. But I was like, I would have provided such shitty service. Yeah. If I were the one that said yes.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I couldn't. Yeah. And that's kind of the process in my network too, is that they'll say yes, knowing they're going to provide shitty service.
But you're saying yes to the right things.
Right. Exactly. I would say yes to the right things. And that served me, and I
it served others too, especially in your business.
Yes. And I think that
I would imagine
as a good business person, though, you want to make sure, like when you take on a client or someone approaches you, that you can serve them best.
Absolutely. And if I can't,
I bet you have a referral list.
I do.
I can't help you, but so and so can.
I do.
I do too.
Yes.
I do that. I've got 5 folks.
I want to help you.
The goal is to help people. And so I always felt like if I was saying no, if I would interview with a family and taking out a program or anything like that, I would always say, I don't think I'm going to be the appropriate person for you. Yeah. But I know who will be.
It's so respectful. Exactly. And people appreciate that because they're, whatever the topic is, they're just looking for help.
Yeah.
Yep. They're just looking for help.
And I was happy to do, you have to have your boundaries, and I learned that too, but I was always willing to help, and I would spend time, sometimes more time than I should helping people, out of pocket.
I know, right? There's a fine line, like when you know but it's like
got to start knowing your worth, and people take advantage.
But I care. I know it's a fine line.
It's a fine line,
and we'll all continue to dance it a little bit.
Yes, but it's nice to have a moral compass, and it's nice to have business ethics.
At the
forefront, at the forefront of your operations and all those things. And I had to ask, what do you think is the most exciting part about being a mom at the same time? You know, you birthed your business and your boy. I just kind of wanted to know, like, what was the most exciting part about being a mom while you're running a business? You know, you got, your. That's
a good question. No one's asked me that before. The most exciting part, I could answer it in different perspectives.
Yeah.
For me, as just Whitney, it's exciting because it has pushed me into where, like, today I'm feeling really good about where I'm at and who I am, and that I am managing all the things. About a year ago, I didn't feel great about managing all the things in a way that was feeling good inside. So I'm grateful that through some chaos, it's given me the opportunity to really dive in and figure that out.
Yeah.
I mean, just watching him grow up and become who he is amazing. Just a little background. I used to beg for a brother because I just have one sister. So I always wanted a little brother, never got it. I was a basketball player, hung with my dad. Like that, I always wanted a boy around. So getting older, I'm like, I just want boys. I'm not having any girls. I'm going to have all boys. And so I have my little boy now. And it's awesome. Like a girl would have been wonderful too. But it's just kind of cool to like see that play out. And he looks like me. He looks like my husband too, but he's a lot like me. And just seeing that, my dad passed away when I was like 20, maybe about to be 21 actually. And he looks so much like my dad.
That's awesome.
And he like acts like, it's just cool. So I'm getting a lot of joy just being a mom in general, and seeing some family things come out in him.
That's neat.
But I'm feeling proud about finding my way, because I'll be honest, my first year, I have all these businesses and things, and I'm really proud of that. But I realize it's like people think of me as like Whitney, the business person. And I'm a lot more than that. And I'm proud of that, but I'm a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And this has been a way for people to see me in another lens, and a way for me to like prioritize something else, and simultaneously find like my creativity is coming out again.
Oh, you're creative.
My playfulness and my, so I'm finding my own little joys along the way of teaching him and helping nourish him, and
absolutely
a million things, Mike. Like, well, it's all exciting, but it's all been really challenging too.
Yeah.
So I've really had to hunker down and like.
Well, that's going to be the hardest role you'll ever have. You know, I think it's amazing too. What I'm excited for is what I love about your journey is that you had already found. I think we're always on an evolution of finding ourselves.
Totally.
As the years go on,
and I'll probably continue to change.
It's an ever evolving process. But I mean, like, I like how you had discovered yourself and more about yourself prior to having your boy.
Yeah.
And then he's teaching you about yourself.
Yeah.
So like he's
going
to be your
there's this whole other side of
mentor.
myself I'm learning now too, where, like I said, like having the baby wasn't a challenge. I comfortable with that. I get that. But it was all this outside commitment, and like the way my brain was mentally in this other stuff when I'm right here with this baby that I've always wanted. It was like, holy shit, like turn that off.
Right.
So it was just an unexpected thing. But again, like the sign from the universe to make some changes.
Yeah.
And so I am.
That's
I did.
awesome.
I am. I'll continue to.
I love it. Me too. It's an ever evolving process. So what's on the horizon? What kind of changes are coming up in 2025?
2025, I feel is, I'm going to use the word alignment again. A lot of the work that I've done the last 2 years is kind of coming to fruition. This first quarter of 25, I'm actually offloading some things. I say offloading, not because they're bad, but I'm making some transitions professionally. I'm selling one of my businesses.
Wow.
And I'm selling one of my investment properties. And so those are like two big things that
I'm selling an investment property too. I may need you.
Oh, let's talk.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd love to help you if you need. So again, just another step in the right direction where I can have a little more time back for myself and, a little money in my pocket too.
Yeah.
But to choose what that next investment is that works with where I'm at.
Well, you're tapping into your creativity
where the family
now.
is. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I've wanted to. I did actually, I'll just share this. last January, I went to this Divine Feminine workshop with the intention to tap into my creativity. And I honestly, this was out of my comfort zone. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, but I was open to it.
Yeah.
And it talked about, just in the description, it was speaking to me. So I went out there, I spent a day with these women who have ended up becoming some of my really great friends. And there was an artistic component with like a guided meditation. And then there was like a sound healing component. And that day, I feel like just really got in there somehow.
Yeah.
And creatively, it's opened me up. It's opened me up to like sound healing. I've been using that modality the last year, and I've had some really great experiences with that.
Amazing.
If you ever want to learn, I would love to introduce you to something because I feel like you'd be open to that.
I would be open to it.
It was something that was never on my radar, but like it just came to be.
I'm familiar with
and
it
now
because
I'm like, I hold so much.
I know what that is because it comes up, like I'll put like YouTube on my TV at my house for my dogs, when I leave. And so it'll run all day. And when I come home, sometimes there's the sound healing bowls that are on the
there's different ways.
Yeah. And I think my dogs like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had also experienced it doing yoga in Florida. I'll go visit my folks in Florida, and there's this couple that have a yoga studio, and they do beach yoga 365 days a year. It's free on the beach. They'll just, if you want to give a donation, you go up and put it in their bag. But I go when I visit my parents, I'll go and I'll do the yoga. It's just stretching. You know what I mean? People get intimidated by the
breath
word.
Work is good for me.
It's breathing and it's stretching, and I'm cool with it. So, but they do sound bowls sometimes. Yeah. And you're on the ocean, and I'm like, I'll fall right asleep.
Yeah. Just the sound of the ocean
is
enough for me
beautiful,
too.
Right?
Yeah. But so it kind of opened up my eyes to a corner that I had never explored before. Yeah. And on like a mental, physical, emotional, spiritual level, spoke to me on all levels.
Amazing.
Had some really good like release type things from old traumas that have just helped progress me into the place where I'm at now.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
So that has been
you're
huge.
on the right path and making the right choices when you experience what you just described. Because when I experience certain things and have those outcomes, I mean, nothing's more reassuring than that.
My nervous system has never felt more calm after experiencing like something I didn't know was possible.
Yeah.
And then just learning more about it from a frequency and sound standpoint, it's really fascinating how it speaks to the body. Like when you start to go down that rabbit hole, there's something to it. It's not for nothing, you know? So it's very cool. So that's been something that's really.
I know. I had a guest recently, Christine Carlson. She's.
I've been with the book.
The Don't Sweat the Small Stuff.
Yeah, I have it on my in my living room.
Yes.
On my tray, on my ottoman.
Yes, I get
and I've been picking it up every so often, and everyone it's great.
So she does women's retreats specifically for women, and she does them in Costa Rica. And now that you're telling me about all that, Christine's amazing. Yeah. So I've had multiple, we still talk, and
are they wellness retreats?
I've had multiple conversations with her. I'll send you, I made a highlight reel for her retreats.
Okay.
I'll send it to you. Yeah. It's, they're amazing. And then you can go to her website and check them out. They're like, they do everything you just described. It's like, nutrition and the different modalities and oh my god, these wellness retreats, they're just fantastic. I looked at them. I have a friend in the celebrity space that does the men's retreats.
Cool.
I'm gearing up to go to his, and his also happens to be
Costa Rica?
Costa Rica.
I was gonna say not a bad place to be.
Not a bad place to be. And so like you were talking about offloading one of your investments.
Oh yeah.
And I'm offloading one of mine.
Yeah.
I'm thinking we should line them up. We'll get on the same first class flight. You go to yours, I'll go to mine. We'll talk about them on the way home.
Yeah. I'm down. I'm
going to get you the link, and I got to sign up for his. His is coming up in May. A connection of mine, Jeremy, he runs these retreats, and they look amazing. Like everything like that he does for the men, Christine does for the women. So they cool. they mirror each other, but in their own respective genders. Yeah. And I've always wanted to do something like that.
Well, you have no idea what you're gonna. I mean, you can go in with intention of something you're looking to, clarify or whatever, but you just don't know.
I think it's important to do those things for yourself. I think it's great for you to do that, not only for you, but for you to do that for yourself, for your husband and your boy.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
they benefit from your benefits.
Yeah.
Right.
You hear that old, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
And I was like, ha ha ha. Yeah. But now I kind of see that. And you could say happy husband, happy life too.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're good, the people around you can be good too.
Exactly.
It's just that simple.
It is.
So,
it is just that simple.
If you let it be.
Yes, if you let it be.
So.
And that is something that comes to mind often, where I have I have this conversation come up all the time, where misery loves company.
Yeah.
And you can really choose happiness.
Totally.
I believe that.
You can.
Yeah.
You can. I mean,
That's
there's things
awesome.
you can't control in your life.
Right.
Like your mindset. You can.
But you can choose to leave those things behind.
Yes.
That's what you can do.
Yes.
And so, and it's really comes down to who you surround yourself with. And I'm
Mhm.
so happy to surround myself with you at the Inner
Well,
Circle.
thank you.
I
Same.
think we should go into business together.
Hey, let's see what comes.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking I got a lot of ideas.
Hey, I'm in. Let's
Yes.
talk.
So I've been getting into investments lately.
Awesome.
And that's been a new journey for me and a new experience. So let's talk strategy at Finley Investments.
That's basically what we do at Finley Investments. With flexibility, I always have a strategy to what I'm doing, which is true for the projects that I work on too. And I say that because it's very easy to start going down a line. You know what your end game is, but have you thought about all the pieces to get you there?
Right.
A lot of people know they want to buy something. They know they have the money. Okay, here, get it. Think about the rest later. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Sometimes you're going to end up hiring a consultant to help sort out some things that you didn't think about up front. So I take pride on using strategy because with a background as a project manager, responsible for the big picture, but for all the little things that happen to get you from point A to point Z is a way to say it. So I think it's really important to have a strategy, but to guide that conversation, to guide that process, and not, I always call it wild bill. Like, people like to wild bill it, and that's okay to an extent. But I've seen, usually in an investment, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of time. And if you don't take the time up front to think out or try to anticipate some of those costs or processes or things that you're going to have to go through later, you could lose a lot of money. You could lose the property. You could lose. There's just a lot of liability there that isn't worth it.
Well,
so it's really important.
In a sense, you're offering coaching alongside.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Through experience.
Through experience. Yep. And with the resources that I'm able, because I'm a broker, I'm a consultant, I can be a project manager, but I'm not a attorney. I'm not a engineer. I'm not this, but I have relationships with all those people to pull them into the project as needed to make sure that the client that hired me is being best represented and avoiding as many problems as possible, is a way to say it.
No, I love that, because that's just like somebody getting involved, just starting up a business without any kind of a mentor or a coach. For me, like getting into investments, I would be apt to wild bill it if I didn't have someone in my corner. Like Finley Investments.
And me, like, as the broker working with a wild bill, like, it can be fun, but it can also be really stressful because you're reacting. You're not being proactive.
Right.
And there's a difference. And, strategy comes with that, but sometimes the reaction is something you can't react to.
Right.
And you can't always see everything that's coming, but a lot of times you can, especially with this, when you know the outcome and you know where you're at. It's just a matter of like putting all that in between. If I could chop it up with my hands a little more there, but that's the approach that I take with basically everything that I do. And some things, it might just be super straightforward. It's like, okay, let's wild bill it real quick and just get the property and move on, but generally speaking, that is a difference that I see from me and how some others work, and it translates into everything I do.
That's fantastic. And then how many years have you been in business with Finley Investments?
So I opened that entity at the end of 2017.
Amazing.
So what is that, 8 years?
Yeah, well, because I started up in 2016.
Okay.
So that's funny that we both won those awards.
I left,
in the same year.
I left my company like late October, and it was December that I opened up the
We've
filing.
Literally been walking steps behind each other, in front and behind each other the whole time,
That's
and
so
not
funny.
even connecting. We hadn't connected up until we came to that awards banquet. Yes. What are some closing statements you might have for anybody looking to make that entrepreneurial leap?
Go for
bold
it.
leap. Yeah,
Go for it.
absolutely.
If you're feeling called to something else, something bigger, something different, go for it. Be willing. That's the first. I mean, it's so cliche to an extent,
I
but
love
like
cliches.
empower yourself.
Yeah.
Like trust yourself. Have choices.
Yes.
Allow yourself to make the choices.
Yes.
There's a few. I could give you more.
It's beautiful. No, I know.
But,
We
like,
could go on all day.
I could. Yeah, I really could.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm feeling empowered to empower others lately.
Yeah. No, I
but
love that.
Go for it.
I'm so happy to have
Just
you.
go for it.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you as a guest here on the Inner Circle.
Yeah,
You're welcome
thank you
back
so
anytime.
much.
You're
I
gonna have
really
to be a
appreciate it.
reoccurring guest.
Sure, I'd love to
Yes.
pop in.
That'd
Yeah.
be amazing.
Yeah, I'd
you know,
love
my
to.
initial plan was to have a set guest.
Yeah,
list.
that's right. You shared
Yes.
that. Yeah, I'm open.
You're gonna have a seat.
I
on
feel
the
like
couch.
this is a good fit.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. It is. This
Thank
is
you.
fantastic. I want to thank you for taking the time to come out and do an in studio. I know you've got a busy life and a busy business.
Yeah,
and
that's okay.
yeah, no, I appreciate it.
I'm
You're
happy to
welcome.
make the time. Thank you so
Perfect.
much for having me, Mike.
All right. Well, what are your handles? What is your website?
Website is whitneychenet.com. My handle on Instagram is Whitney Chenet Real Estate for my professional.
And
through
you
that way.
are you're a great contact person for investment proproperties, but
Yeah.
not only commercial investment properties, but residential.
Yeah, residential.
Yes.
So I've, I always kind of laugh that residential is like my side hustle, but the last few years, more and more just keep coming. So I'm just honoring what's coming, and I do it all.
Perfect.
I do it all.
I love it.
So,
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming out to the studio.
yeah, thank you
Ladies
so
and
much.
gentlemen, the beautiful Whitney Chenet.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that's a wrap.